For years, you've known me as AC. What you might not know is that my friends don't call me that. I invite you to a behind-the-scenes look at this person you've got to know as a podcast personality. Through that, I hope you'll get to see the guy my friends know, the one they call Tony. So, last November on the In the Blood podcast, I did an episode called What's Your Story? And the main focus of that episode was looking at how whether two people are super compatible or super incompatible really doesn't have as much bearing on whether or not their relationship is going to be successful as them having a shared story will. If you want to know a little bit more about the background of where I'm coming from, like definitely go back and check out that episode. It's loaded with some, I think, good stuff. So I don't really want to repeat too much of what I've already gone into detail with there. One of the limitations of that particular episode is I didn't really want to get into the romantic angle so much because, I don't know, for whatever reason over the years, I've preferred to stick with talking about platonic relationships, except in rare cases where I've delved into romance a little bit. I guess it's not like for no reason. It just, I feel like there's a lot of people that are more qualified than I am to speak on the topic of romance. And also there's a lot of people in general just talking about romance. One more voice in that mix doesn't seem like a terribly necessary thing. Now, talking about platonic relationships, that's always grabbed my attention for a couple of reasons. One is that there aren't really comparatively as many people talking about the platonic. So right there, you know, any opinion I share is probably going to catch a little bit better attention. Another reason is that I actually feel qualified to speak to that because I think I'm pretty good at platonic relationships for the most part. I mean, definitely there's ups and downs, but I mean, that's just the nature of any two people bumping up against each other, right? There's going to be friction once in a while. But for the most part, I think I do okay. And I think the last thing is that even if you're getting into the world of talking about romantic relationships, I mean, like the sex, the passion, the flirting, I don't know, whatever it is that separates romance from platonic, these aren't terribly complicated things to figure out. I mean, any idiot, conceivably, if they take 5 minutes to put their mind to it, they can figure out how to woo another person, right? How to like flirt, how to whatever. Even something as basic as like how to get laid. Super, super easy stuff. But I think the part that makes a romantic relationship last, weirdly, isn't the romance component so much as the platonic component. I mean, if you have two people that just really, really like fuck, there's only so much fuck you can do before you get hungry and you got to go to the grocery store and decide what to eat. Now, those two people that are going to run errands together, yeah, maybe for the first couple of months, you're going to be all handsy. You're going to be making out as you're like picking out a head of lettuce or whatever. At some point, that's going to settle down. And that's not romance dying. That's just reality kicking in. Once reality kicks in, who are these two people that are going to the store? Are these two people that have a solid relationship? Or are these just two buddies that are forced into running an errand that everybody hates? Forced into having a conversation that's going to expose all the cracks in their relationship. That's going to shine a spotlight on the fact that outside of the bedroom, outside of the candlelight dinners, outside of the long walks on the beach looking at the moonlight or whatever, you're just two people that can't stand each other. And I don't know. That's where I think like the shared story really is going to be the make or break there. And it's not just about like, okay, do we both have similar goals? Because I mean, if you want to boil goals down to their bare basics, it's like, you want to be happy, healthy, and well adjusted. You want to have something to look forward to. You just want to, in general, like in the most basic terms, you want to feel okay, right? Now, we have different ideas about how to get there, but I mean, assuming everybody involved is somewhat mentally healthy-ish, both of these people are going to want to feel okay for the most part, right? So I think most of our goals, because they're built around feeling okay, I mean, goals aren't really as divisive as we sometimes perceive them to be. Now, where the story comes into play is like in the application of the plan, in plotting out the steps on how to achieve the goals. That's where things start to get a little bit wonky. And, like I said, I'm no expert on how to make a romantic relationship work. I mean, I've been married twice, divorced twice. So, I mean, if you're if you're looking for somebody to tell you how to keep your stick on the ice, this may not be the particular source for that kind of golden information. I'm just kind of wanting to share from like what I've been thinking about and what I'm coming to realize. And I don't know. It's like when I look at my relationship with my second wife, I think that's when I really started to realize how much the shared story or the lack thereof came into play, because her and I on the surface, we were actually really, really compatible people. We liked having similar conversations. We liked a lot of the same foods. For the most part, we liked doing the same things. Like she was a very, very easy companion. But when things started to fall apart and we started having conversations about why they were falling apart, I realized that this wasn't something where there was like a little bit of counseling was going to fix it, or where there was room for compromise. This was a case of we did not have the option of being happy together forever. I mean, it didn't matter that we'd been together for like 13, 14 years, something like that. What mattered is that despite how much time was invested, we didn't want to invest any more, because the end result was not going to be happiness for both of us at the same time. One of us was going to have, or I should say at least one of us was going to have to give up on our ideal story. And that's not something that I think is fair to demand of another person. And I don't think it's something that's fair to volunteer for another person. And I realized through talking to her, I mean, it was really easy to listen to her and think, wow, you're the only reason that your story is the way that it is because you're trying to emulate the way your parents' relationship was, and look at how they worked out. Like your mom and dad got divorced the second you and your sibling were grown up and out of the house. And I'm thinking, for similar reasons, my story is clearly the superior one, because my superior is rooted in my parents' relationship, And one of the big differences was that her parents, they had a very practical arrangement, like mom and dad took care of mom and dad stuff. They had separate interests. They had separate circles of friends. If you saw them together, you never really would have guessed that like these two people were a couple. I mean, there were reasons for that, but they're not my details to share. So I'll leave it at that. But for whatever reason, my ex-wife looked at her parents and thought, like this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think she found me really, really frustrating for the same reason I found her really, really frustrating, because when I think about like what was normal from my perspective was my mom, she didn't work outside of the house for most of my childhood. And I'm not saying that like I thought that a woman's place was at home. It's just because she was at home, I got to witness the way she reacted to my dad coming home from work every day. Because, obviously kids come home from school typically earlier than parents come home from work. And when dad's car would pull into the driveway, mom would make sure that, our shirts were tucked in, our hair was all smoothed out. She would like smooth out or she would take off her apron. She would smooth out her dress or her blouse or whatever she was wearing. And she'd be super, super excited when he walked in the door. He was going to see this happy, clean, well-groomed family waiting for him. And she would kiss him and welcome him home. And, you know, he would come in the door. He would play with us kids, whatever. But even as he was playing with us and we were having fun, we could always see that her eyes were on him and that his eyes were on her. I mean, them as a couple, it seemed like the most important thing in the room. No matter which room they were in, everybody knew that these two people were in love and that they were together, right? So when I grow up, I'm thinking that there's going to be much of this same stuff. Now, my ex-wife, being a person who's adopting this model or thinking like her ideal story is one where it's like, okay, we're together, but not together, was never, ever going to mesh with my idea of we're up each other's ass all the time. I mean, not literally, I'm assuming, but you know, but it's like my parents, they were just like, they were flirty. They were grabby. They would like kiss each other. They would grope each other. They would just, you know, do all the things that, I don't know, probably inappropriate in front of children, but I mean, you could tell, at least, well, I can't say you could tell. I mean, it appeared on the surface as though these two people were super duper into each other. And, in all honesty, I think both of my marriages failed because of this idea of what normal was supposed to be based on this relationship that I had witnessed. Now, what I found out many, many years later, and I'm not talking like, you know, barely into adulthood. I'm talking about like, I'm 51 years old right now. I found out, I don't know, either just before or just after I turned 50. So this is like a fairly recent piece of knowledge that came to me. And it kind of surprised the hell out of me because like, I never would have guessed. But my parents' relationship was my dad was super, super insecure. He was always worried that my mom was going to leave him, you know, and she treated him as less than because of this constant insecurity. I mean, I don't think it's a very attractive quality when you're looking across the table at somebody who's super, super insecure all the time. But I think what wasn't really fair about her distaste for his insecurity is that his insecurity was super, super well justified. I mean, she never told him what was what. She told me. I mean, I wish I'd known much, much earlier. It would have taken a lot of pressure off of my marriages, I can tell you that. But I mean, the reality is my mom was in love with another man for the entirety of her marriage to my dad. So she didn't want to be there with him. She didn't want to be there with us. I mean, she spent a lot of time feeling torn between the life that she had committed to and the life that she actually wanted. We were a cage around her, and I think she reacted, you know, in all kinds of ways because of that, which, you know, in combination with me observing this complete farce of a story that I subconsciously was trying to emulate later in life, it instilled in me a lot of insecurities that were going to further aggravate any romantic entanglements I was going to have. Without even realizing it, I had become this big ball of insecurity. I had, it just, I don't know. It just, I guess when anything is normal to us, it's almost invisible. It's white noise. It's not something that stands out. It might stand out to people that observe us from the outside, but from the inside looking out, like, why the hell would I notice this? Why would I notice that I've got a deep-rooted fear of abandonment because my young perceptive mind had observed a mother that wanted to get the out of our family, but couldn't. So there's that fear of abandonment, which also combined itself with this insecurity that like people aren't being truthful, that they're hiding something. Because that was the example that was set. My mom did want out. She was hiding things. My dad was insecure. I mean, part of that like effed up dynamic was because he was so insecure, because he was so afraid that he had married out of his league. She was too good for him, that she might leave at any given moment. He kissed her ass relentlessly. He enabled complete garbage behavior. There's another thing I picked up. Little kids, they're like sponges. They suck up whatever example is put in front of them. And again, like, I think that, I don't know about my first wife. I'd probably have to ask her at some point, but I know for sure my second wife, she used to get so irritated. It's like, she's like, there were times where she would just like straight out confront me, and she'd say, you know what? I'm being a total bitch to you. Why are you apologizing? Like, what's wrong with you? It's like she looked at me like I was just disgusting, less than, like, wow, you piece of shit. Like, grow a backbone, grow a pair of balls, whatever. And it wasn't that I didn't have a backbone or a pair of balls. It's just I was afraid to show them. I was afraid to use them because, that's not how my love story played out. Anyways, that's just a whole bunch about like why I'm like kind of effed up. I don't want to like make any suggestions as far as like what things might be like for you. Like I said, like there's no real messages to the show. This is just you getting to know me. And this is a big part of me, is like kind of the dysfunctional expectations, the dysfunctional approaches I have when it comes to relationships, especially of the romantic variety. And like, as my ADHD mind sometimes does, it kind of started channel surfing through kind of like related topics as I was sitting here pondering all this stuff about like I don't want to say like the shared love story, but I want to say like my personal love story, because I gotta be really vigilant as far as like who I get connected with. If it's going to be serious, I need to make sure that the stories are compatible. I also got to make sure above anything else that if my story is super, super unhealthy, I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing on that thing and make sure that like I'm not putting unfair or unreasonable expectations on a situation or on another person or even on myself. I got to make sure I'm like approaching things with healthy expectations, healthy boundaries, healthy behaviors, healthy attitudes, just healthy. But anyways, to go back to where my ADHD mind was wandering to, years ago, I was having like a recurring nightmare, and I had somebody sit down and kind of offer some really, really basic level therapy, like trying to get to the root of like where this nightmare was coming from, what it was all about, because like I could remember a lot of the feelings about it, but I couldn't remember clear details, like the events of it. And anybody who's gone through that knows how frustrating it is, because there's something there. You just don't know what it is or how to find it. And without getting into the details of what that dream was all about, it really all comes down to the question that was asked. And the question was really, really a good one. And the question was, if you had to give this dream a title, what would the title be? And I had one of those holy moments, because without even remembering the details of the dream, it's just like tying all the feelings together, like labeling the emotional experience with a title as though I was like coming up with a name for a movie. I got straight to the heart of what was bothering me, and the nightmares stopped. So what I'm wondering now is, if I'm going to think about my ideal love story, and I'm going to try to figure out what it's all about and maybe how to fix it, maybe I should be taking the same approach, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, I'm even in a better position than I was with the dream, because I do know the details. I know the origins. I know the context. I mean, I got so much to work with. The fact that I need to like get greedy by grasping for a title just to like solve this riddle actually seems kind of stupid, but here we are. And I realized that I think the best title for my story, it's just like a total ripoff of a Bon Jovi song, but it's "I'll Be There For You." Like no matter what, I realized that like the huggy, the kissy, the cleaning up the kids, greeting at the door bullshit, I don't really need any of that. But I think like if I'm going to edit out all the unhealthy bits and just like stick with the part that works, the part that I really, really need, I'll be there for you. Like she'll be there for me. I'll be there for her. It'll be like her and I united against the world. We're not going to turn on each other when things get tough. It's like we're going to press into each other. Like the collective will be strong. We'll defend each other publicly. We'll challenge each other privately. But it's never going to be a case of, wow, times are tough. And now, you know, in addition to all the other problems you got, well, now you can deal with my attitude as well. I don't want to be in a relationship like that. I don't want to be on the giving or the receiving end of a bad attitude. I want to stand shoulder to shoulder, side to side, hand in hand with the person that I choose to partner with. And I want to be there for her. And I want to be able to trust beyond any shadow of a doubt that no matter what happens, she will be there for me. Anyways, my friends, I think I've gone on just about long enough today. As always, if you got thoughts on this or anything else I've spoken about, either on this podcast or on any other, feel free to send me an email. Call me TonyPod@yahoo.com. And yeah, until next week, I guess we'll just leave it at that. Have a good one, guys.